This is Cultish Tendencies 11 and is entitled They Began as Oasis, Became SP, and Are Ending Up as a Mirage. And as we continue to focus on and address the cultism of the Abu Khadijites, it's important to identify and highlight root causes behind their continuing campaign of lies and deceit. And in a recent article that was published in The Guardian on the 3rd of August 2018, a discussion ensued regarding a term called denialism. And denialism was defined as what drives people to reject the truth. And the definition continued, quote, denialism is an expansion and intensification of denial. At root, denial and denialism are simply a subset of the many ways humans have developed to use language to deceive others and themselves. Denial can be as simple as refusing to accept that someone else is speaking truthfully, close quote. When we look at the denialism of the cult, when we look at the deceit of the cult, we only have to refer to the recent writings of the armchair warrior and warrior, Dr. Amjad Rafiq, the Milk Sheikh, in which he's decided to now comment on a court case and court judgment that was against their sheikh at the time, Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi. And it's unsurprising that they've brought this now, when at the time of the judgment, nothing was to be heard by this cult at all. However, before reading this judgment and the comments from Dr. Amjad, we see that Abu Khadija had written a blog on his website and called it Refutation upon Ibrahim al-Rahili by the noble scholar Al-Allama Muhammad ibn Hadi in the issue of Jahm ibn Safwan. Now, that is no longer available on Abu Khadija's website. When you click the link, it says not found. And this is yet another indication of the duplicity of this cult. And we don't have to look too far back to see that this is a trend of theirs, that when incriminating evidence or when they have changed the position, they scuttle around almost rat-like to remove evidence that now stands against them. And this particular link is one of them. And if we look back at more recent evidence, following the night shift that was delivered on Once Upon a Time in England last year, where the history of Salafiyah was given and the imbalance and untruths from Abu Khadija's account and his narration that was kept on his website for a long time was addressed by me. What we saw was a number of websites of theirs belonging to them withdrawn, at least 3, temporarily unavailable. And then when they were updated, the historical narrative of Abu Khadija regarding Salafiyah had changed. And it had had to change for the simple reason that he lay claim in his original account to being involved in Salafiyah from the early 90s. But from even cult members who have been around for a long time and joined them, they know, and others know, that his involvement wasn't until the late 90s, mid to late 90s. He was a Johnny-come-lately as Jemass was folded. And he was one of the instigators of Oasis. So his narrative changed to remove that initial claim. And it needed to. Another example of when websites are shut down or amended or original postings removed is when their lackeys, their members in London, Dar es Sunnah, removed particular articles that were relating to me and supposed allegations and refutations from Sheikh Rabi' on myself and Brixton concerning the Abul Hassan affair, Sheikh Ali Hassan affair, and everything to do with that. And that posting was quite old, very, very old. However, that was suddenly removed and unavailable. And then lo and behold, around October 2017, we see a new title appear on Abu Khadija's website with that age-old article and with a title suggesting that Sheikh Rabi' had just done a fresh refutation with all of that information regarding Abul Hassan. But it only takes a discerning eye to realise that Sheikh Rabi' hadn't done that recently, because in September to October 2017, Sheikh Rabi' had been flown to Jeddah for major surgery, and that was known. So it's highly unlikely that after major surgery, he would have considered it necessary and urgent to do a refutation on someone as insignificant as myself in the scale of things. So this shows how they scurry around, as I've just mentioned, to cover incriminating evidence or when things turn against them. So going back to that article that Abu Khadija has since removed from his website, he defends and reproduces some of Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi's comments regarding Sheikh Ibrahim Ruhaili. And one of them, for example, quote, "Today we hear a repugnant saying," referring to Ibrahim Ruhaili, close quote. Then he continues to refer to poetry from Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi concerning Sheikh Ibrahim Ruhaili. Now, fast forward to today, and we see that the armchair warrior and warrior, Dr. Amjad Rafiq, has been very busy defending their position, the cult's position, and banging out information against their long-standing sheikh, who they used to call Allama up until very recently, Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi. So one paper here in which he decides to bring the court ruling against Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi is called Lessons from the Affair of Ibrahim al-Ruhaili, the difference between knowledge-based refutations founded upon evidence and fiery emotional babble. The criminal court ruling against Mohammed bin Hadi in 2015. Note here again, Sheikh Mohammed has gone now, it's been removed. So after he discusses some of the mashaykh who embarked upon advice and refutation of Sheikh Ibrahim al-Ruhaili, including Sheikh Rabi', Sheikh Abdullah al-Bukhari, Sheikh Ubayl al-Jabri, he then comments on Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi, who remember, they were with at the time. And this is what he says, quote, "In contrast, Mohammed bin Hadi landed himself in court proceedings due to his agitating, emotional, arousing speech in which he made 5 or so accusations that angered al-Ruhaili," close quote. Dr. Amjad then goes on to explain about Sheikh Ibrahim challenging Sheikh Mohammed to either a written or spoken debate, and if not, the matter would go to court. And as we know, it subsequently ended up in court. So we'll continue with what Dr. Amjad had said. Quote, "Al-Ruhaili took the affair to court. The judgment was awarded to Al-Ruhaili, and it is said that Mohammed bin Hadi was to be imprisoned, lashed, and fined according to the original judgment. However, to escape this, Mohammed bin Hadi strove for a resolution with the aid of intercessors, presumably who'd advised Ibrahim al-Ruhaili to revoke the original sentence. Full stop. The end result was the following, which occurs in the resolution agreed in the criminal court of Al-Madinah." He then says in the footnote, "These affairs have not been widely publicized and have been concealed by Mohammed bin Hadi for obvious reasons." Close quote from that footnote. There's a little bit more, but it's irrelevant at this stage. We will now refer to the ruling as written by Dr. Amjad. He quotes the last page of the judgment, page 27 of 27, which shows they had knowledge and access to this at the time for a long time. It's highly unlikely they had no knowledge of this whatsoever. And it reads, Criminal Court of Al-Madinah, resolution number 3611906668. Date, the 23rd of the 6th, 1436 Hijri, corresponding to the 12th of April, 2015. Quote, "I, Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi bin Ali Madkhali, affirm that I attended the department specific to the governorship of the region of Al-Madinah in relation to the differing that occurred between me and Sheikh Ibrahim bin Amir bin Ali al-Ruhaili, and I was made to understand that I must adhere to not tarnishing the reputation of Sheikh Ibrahim al-Ruhaili, 2, or others beside him from the students of knowledge and the scholars in the future. through revilement, defamation, disparagement, or belittling of their status and rank, or by attacking them, whether directly or through insinuation, whether in special, private gatherings or general gatherings, whether through social media, other forms of media, and to keep away from everything that leads to differing and splitting. And if I have a view on a matter, then it is to be raised to the respected Mufti of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia or to His Royal Highness the Emir of the region. Upon this I pledge to adhere to what I have been made to understand out of obedience to Allah, His Messenger, and to the leader, may Allah protect him, out of the desire to maintain a united rank and a united word and to repel tribulation and differing. And Allah is the bestower of success, the one who affirms what is therein, Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi bin Ali al-Madkhali, assistant to the chief of the criminal court in Al-Madinah, Ahmed bin Muhammad Musa al-Musa. So that is the summary that has been given, end of quote, that is the summary that has been given by Dr. Amjad in his paper. Now, again, this was known since April 2015 and was actually posted on some websites, spubs.com, who are individuals who continually go out against the cult as well, Kullu Salafiyin, and dated the 16th of April 2015. So the question is, why is it that the cult are bringing this now? Why is that? And we only have to look and see from his comments to answer that question. Quoting from Dr. Amjad's receipt now. Both during this affair and after this resolution was made, Muhammad ibn Hadi would boast how he had a huge file of evidence against Ibrahim al-Ruhaili and other inflated boastful claims. How do you know of these claims? Close quote. How do you know of them, Dr. Amjad? Were they being done with yourselves, the cult, when you visited him, and so you knew this and you sided with him, but you didn't come out with anything just yet, but you knew about it? So why are you using it now? Again, the same question. Let's continue because the answer becomes clear. Continuing with the quote. But he kept his judgment concealed and did not make it known that he has been prohibited by the Wali al-Amr to speak about anyone with disparagement, whether in private or public, and to keep away from everything that causes splitting. What did he do next? This is Amjad Tasiq. He's warming up now. Lo and behold, shar, Sa Africa, a mighty word of oppressive falsehood. He disobeyed Allah and His Messenger and the Wali al-Amr and caused splits, not just in Medina, but across the whole world. Close quote. Then he gives some examples of statements of Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi directed against them. Now, our question is, but you were with him. You were with him when this judgment took place. He was still Allama Muhammad bin Hadi. And now that he has spoken and realized the reality of you as a cult, this is the position that you're taking. And this is very, very unfortunate, very, very duplicitous, very, very treacherous. But those who know the reality of the Abu Khadijites, those 18, 19, 20 plus scholars over the years who have either removed themselves from their toxic narrative, their toxic methodology, and no, this cannot be constituted that I'm saying Salafiyah and the Manhaj are toxic. This is what they do with their warped understanding. The toxic methodology, distorted methodology that they deploy. Those 19, 20 plus scholars realized that, either advised or warned against them, and as a result, they then turned and caused whatever dissension they could amongst the ranks of other scholars to ensure that these particular scholars were defamed, disparaged, written off. Concluding this paper from Dr. Amjad, he says, quote, "Dear reader, you should know with conviction that just like Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Albad's intervention in the fitna of Abul Hassan al-Ma'rabi during the early 2000s did not help al-Ma'rabi, whose misguidance became clear to the whole world after the Egyptian revolution of 2011, proving that Sheikh Rabi was a decade ahead of Sheikh Abdul Muhsin al-Albad in this affair, and that he is an unrivaled Imam in this field, in this era, then likewise, the intervention of no one is going to allow Muhammad bin Hadi to escape untouched for the oppression, splitting, turmoil he has created upon the way of the Haddadite extremists, whom Sheikh Rabi' has been refuting for over 2 decades, close quote. We need to pause for a moment and reflect that wasn't Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi also referring the Haddadi methodology for 20 years? Wasn't Allama Muhammad bin Hadi also aligned with Maktab al-Salafiyah, the Abu Khadijites, for 20 years? Didn't Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi refer to the Abu Khadijites as students of his for the past 20 years? So how is it that it's only Sheikh Rabi' who had been warning against the Haddadi extremist methodology for 20 years? There is enough information, enough excessive praise from the Abu Khadijite cult. They have not been able to scuttle and remove all of this, in which they praise Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi and he praises them. So the double standards and duplicity of this particular cult becomes ever more clearer. And we need to rectify a statement of Dr. Amjad, which has gathered momentum amongst the cult for a long time now. Actually, it's been the cult that has been instrumental in causing oppression, splitting and turmoil for the past 20 years. Go back to when they were Oasis and chart the path of their development over those past 20 years and see the fitna that they've been immersed in the middle of. And then it will become clear that scholars were either manipulated, unaware, ill-informed for them to make some of the statements that they've made against some of the du'at, some of the Salafis in the West, some of the scholars. And who has been behind all of this? I don't think you'd have to research too deeply to see that the SP Abu Khadijite cult has been involved from the beginning up until now. If we refer now to Sheikh Rabi's defense of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Hadi in 2011 and contrast that with some of the statements now. So on the 6th of November 2011, on the Salafi Talk website, in one of their forums, it says from Sheikh Rabi, Hafizahullah, indeed there is to be found amongst people some who speak ill of Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi and Sheikh Abdullah Bukhari. And it continues discussing that this is not specific to Sheikh Muhammad bin Hadi and Sheikh Abdullah Bukhari. This happened before against prophets and others. But continuing with Sheikh Rabi's quote, the English rendition of course. So they bring harm upon Muhammad bin Hadi and other than him, and to Bukhari and to Rabi' and other than them. The people speak ill of them with falsehood, oppression and fabrication. Barakallahu feekum. They did not leave Ahmad bin Hanbal, nor Ibn Taymiyyah, nor Ibn Abdul Wahhab and other than them amongst the Imams of Islam. They were not saved from being spoken against. How are you people ignorant of this so as to ask this question? Now, that reference to the Salaf is a weighty reference, and respectfully, I would proffer that the likes of those who are mentioned are not weighed in the scales of the scholars that are referred to by Sheikh Rabi', even though the scholars like Sheikh Rabi' have repute and weight in this era. Continuing, quote, those who speak ill of Muhammad bin Hadi and Bukhari claim Salafiyah, whilst by Allah they wage war against Salafiyah, its usul and its manhaj, and they hide themselves with Salafiyah in order to be able to misguide the slaves of Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala and to hinder them from the straight path. We ask Allah to guide them or return their plots upon them and to repel their plots from the truth and its people. That was in 2011. We fast forward to 2018, and this is what is quite concerning, because the statement of Sheikh Rabi' now says, we have been patient with him, Muhammad bin Hadi. However, Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq, his fitna is just a tenth of that of Muhammad bin Hadi. He has split Salafis all over the world. when we compare that and the patience with Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi, we've heard this statement before from Sheikh Rabi, that he was patient with Abul Hassan, that he was patient with Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq, that he was patient with Ali Hassan. And that is to be believed from our Sheikh. But then the question is, with such patience, how has it got to where it's got to now? And I can't answer that, and I dare say none of the listeners can answer that. But this is a trend that has been monopolized and capitalized upon by the cult. We also move to other statements now from Dr. Amjad Rafiq, in which he explains the fitna of Ibn Hadi, as he's referred to, being more severe than Abdurrahman Abdul Khaliq. And quote from his paper, Muhammad bin Hadi oppressively made tabdi of Salafis and was unable to substantiate his judgment with evidence and demonstrate that he had indeed followed the principles of Ahlul Sunnah in the topic of refuting the opposer and expelling a person from Salafiyah, close quote. However, he is speaking not concerning the Salafis that this was done to over the past 20 years by Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi, with the fuel from the Maktaba cult, the Abu Khadijites. When he's saying that Mohammed bin Hadi oppressively made tabdi of Salafis, they consider only themselves as the Salafis. You will recall from earlier Cultish Tendencies, when speaking about Dr. Abdullah Lahmami, that he would go to the scholars and say they are speaking against the Salafis, giving the impression that those who were speaking against them as Salafis were not Salafi. This is a corrupt narrative that they continue with, and it gives the false impression to whoever the listener is that those who are criticizing them are not Salafi. He then goes on to quote Sheikh Rabi, referring to Muhammad bin Hadi's speech as babble. He has nothing, he has no evidence. However, this babble of Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi was okay when he was with you and you were with him. But it's now babble because it's against you. That paper was from Dr. Amjad on the 25th of Dhul Qaeda, so very, very recently, 1439. Continuing with statements that now condemn, or supposedly condemn, Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi. We'll look at a compilation of other statements from Sheikh Rabi' that are being highlighted and shared by Dr. Amjad and the Abu Khadijite cult. Quotes from Sheikh Rabi', he, Muhammad bin Hadi, is more severe than them. He is more severe than the Haddadis because he broke the back of Salafiyah. He defaced the Salafi dawah and split it all over the world. Close quote. Another quote from Sheikh Rabi'. Quote, he is the one who is affected by Ahl al-Bidah. He wages war against Salafis. Muhammad bin Hadi is the one who is affected by Ahl al-Ahwa. He wages war against Salafis. Then he proceeds to cause splits all over the world. Close quote. A quick question here is, when did that all start taking place? Did it only occur recently, in the last 6, 7, 8 months, or the last year? Or has this been something that's been taking place for 20 years, 15 years, 10 years? I'm decreasing the period of time. How long has this been taking place? And if it's been taking place, why then was Sheikh Rabi' patient with him? And why then did the Maktaba cult stick with him all of this time, praising him right up until very recently? And we can just look at their websites from 2017 up until very recently. How long has Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi been splitting Salafis all over the world? This question needs to be answered. Then another quote from Sheikh Rabi'. The path of Muhammad bin Hadi, it is more vile than that of Haddadiyah. Close quote. And the final quote that I will refer to at this point from this paper from Dr. Amjad Rafiq. Quote, those who show partisanship towards the speech of Muhammad bin Hadi in falsehood and who blindly follow his speech in falsehood without any evidence, they have been nurtured upon an evil cultivation. They have not been nurtured upon Salafiyah. They have not been nurtured upon the cultivation of Imam Ahmed, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, Ibn al-Qayyim, and others from the righteous Salaf. Close quote. Now, this is an important statement that comes from Sheikh Rabi', because when referring to nurturing, we know that nurturing is a process. Nurturing takes time. You cannot nurture someone in a day or 2 days or 3 days or a week or 4 weeks. Nurturing takes years. So when the Sheikh is referring to whoever it is that has been under the tutelage of Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi and that they have not been nurtured upon Salafiyah, does that not extend to the Abu Khadijite cult, who have been ardent followers and so-called students of Sheikh Mohammed ibn Hadi? So they have not been nurtured upon Salafiyah, and the corruption of some of the ideals and distortions in the methodologies that they profess to follow are an indication of this defective nurturing. And those who blindly follow his speech, they have done this right up until very recently. The evil cultivation. Yes, the fruits of evil cultivation are seen amongst the Abu Khadijites. So Shaykh Rabi' should reflect, as I'm sure other shuyukh will speak to him, we hope, inshallah, to show him that this description that he has given fits none other than those who are using him now and hiding under his wing now, the Abu Khadijites, because it benefits them at this particular juncture. Continuing, we will digress a little and look at something recent that is still in the air, and Abu Khadija, Abu Hakim, Bilal Davis, and a few others need to respond to. Abdul Karim, Abu Sufyan, has recently sent out a message, an audio message to them, calling them out by name, calling them liars regarding the misappropriation of funds in Reading. And he has challenged them to mubahala, to invoke the curse of Allah upon the liars. And he's given them 1 month to do that. And for those who don't know, they just need to look at the Ibn Adam channel on YouTube to see a CCTV recording of Abu Sufyan sitting with Naveed from Reading, one of the lackeys and cohorts of the Abu Khadijites, discussing the theft of some money, in which Naveed explains that the individuals who had stolen the money were guilty, and they were none other than his brother and his best friend Khalid. Naveed currently works in Saudi Arabia, in Taif, and lives in Medina, for those who don't know which Naveed we're talking about. And Abu Sufyan, there's no love lost between myself and him, but I still respect him, because he's an individual who will stand and speak. And they fear him. And they feared him for many, many years, even though he's among them. So this challenge, they need to respond to. But Abu Khadija and his cowardice means it's unlikely that he will do that. Abu Hakim similarly, and the others that he's mentioned. So I've gone off at that tangent because it's necessary to show that we're not just referring to the issue of Sheikh Mohammed ibn Hadi regarding the deception of this cult, the evil of this cult. We can go and look amongst their own. And Abu Sufyan has been around a lot longer than all of those individuals from the Abu Khadijite cult. He was there in the early 90s. He was one of the leaders in the Dawah at that time. And so he's not to be trifled or messed about with by them or by any other who know the Dawah Salafiyah in the UK. Drawing to a conclusion very shortly, it's necessary to refer back to a scientific basis to describe the root causes as to why this cult are like they are. They're afflicted with various types of cognitive bias. And until their members realize this, their denial, their falsehood, their duplicity, their cheating, their deception will continue. And I will refer to 5 categories of cognitive bias very quickly. The first one is in-group bias. In-group bias. And that is unfairly favoring those who belong to your group. And when we look at what Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi said concerning them at this time, he describes them with this, quote, "If he is with you, then he is the most truthful of the people, even if in reality he is the biggest liar and most corrupt of the people. On the other hand, If he is not with you, then he is the biggest liar, even if in reality he is the most pious and the most truthful of the people. Close quote from Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi. Moving on to the second category, which is group think. And that's described as allowing the social dynamics of a group situation to override the best outcomes. Dissent can be uncomfortable and dangerous to one's social standing. So often, the most confident is the one who determines decisions. Abu Khadija, the head of the Abu Khadijites in this instance. The third category is called belief bias. And this is described as if a conclusion supports your existing beliefs, you'll rationalize it and anything that supports it. And we see that this is what's happening with the Abu Khadijites. The Abu Khadijites are practicing a form of taqleed that is even worse than those who follow the four madahib. They're following a blind they're doing a blind following that is more reprehensible than those who are accused of following the four schools of thought. 4. Confirmation bias. And this is described as, and you can easily attribute this to them, they look for what ways to justify their existing beliefs and positions. And then the fifth and final categorization of bias, cognitive bias, the backfire effect. When their core beliefs are challenged, it causes them to believe in them more strongly. And as you can see, this is what's happening with this cult. They see they're dwindling, diminishing numbers, but they're entrenching themselves even further, and they're clutching on to hadith that they think refers to them. Al-Ghuraba, At-Taif al-Mansura, the Fiqh al-Najiyah. They're holding on to this saying and holding on to hot coals. They think that hadith refers to them because of the trials and the dwindling numbers, and they become more staunch in their beliefs and their positions. They become more constipated, as was described by a student of knowledge, in how they behave and how they look. And now, to conclude with a series of things that need to be addressed, and we look at some of the statements of Sheikh Mohammed bin Sheikh Rabi' in a conference that he delivered in Taif on the 22nd of the 6th month, 1426, almost 13 or so years ago. And in this, Sheikh Rabi' says, "O brothers, lies are worse than innovations. A liar is worse than an innovator in the view of Ahl Sunnah. One can narrate from an innovator. They, Ahl Sunnah, narrated from the Qadariyah, Murjiyah, and other than them from different types of people of innovation, so long as his innovation was not one which takes a person out of the fold of Islam, and so long as he was not a liar. If a liar belongs to Ahl Sunnah, he is considered more vile than the people of innovation." Again, if a liar belongs to Ahl Sunnah, he is considered more vile than the people of innovation in the sight of Ahl Sunnah. And it is based upon this that Ibn Adi, rahimahullah, in his book Al-Kamil, included approximately 29 chapters about liars and 1 chapter about the people of innovation. And here, what we've got to look at, the reality of the Abu Khadijites, Salafi publications, is that to date they've actually fought against many scholars in Dawat Salafiyah. Also, we've got to note that they are not with Sheikh Rabi' as they falsely claim. They're hiding under his wing and using him, as they've done with many of the Mashaykh. So don't be fooled and deluded into thinking that the Abu Khadijites are with the Kibar. They're not with the Kibar, they're not with Sheikh Rabi'. Just because you see that outwardly, that is not the reality. You only have to look at their 20-year relationship with Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi to understand that they use the scholars. As, I'll go for a tangent here, as one article stated regarding the current turmoil about the niqab and Boris Johnson's statements in the UK, one article said, this is not about the niqab, it's about Boris Johnson. And if we change that slightly and say, this is not about the ulama and following the ulama, this is about the Abu Khadijites and their business and their existence and their holding on to status. This is what this is really about. But it's been disguised and covered and cloaked with they're with the ulama, they're with the scholars. They're not with the scholars, they're with the dollars. And we'll conclude by looking now, definitely concluding, Surah Humaza, ayat 1. Woe to every slanderer and backbiter. And then we also look at Surah Al-Hujurat, ayat 12, English rendition again. O you who believe, avoid much suspicion. Indeed, some suspicions are sins. And spy not, neither backbite one another. Would one of you like to eat the flesh of his dead brother? You would hate it. And fear Allah. Verily Allah is the one who forgives and accepts repentance, most merciful. Now, I would end with this. This recording is not a defense or support for any of the parties involved. Sheikh Mohammed ibn Hadi is receiving, he is the recipient of some of the very same treatment that he had delivered to Salafis in the West, du'at, regular brothers, and scholars in the Muslim world for the past 20 years. And his statements are there. And he's been approached, and he's been met, and he's been written to, and he's been complained about. And so he's receiving the very medicine, bitter fruit, that he, alongside the Maktaba cult, the Abu Khadijah, have been delivering for over 20 years. So this is not a defense of Sheikh Mohammed bin Hadi. This is not a defense of anyone. This is an elucidation and a narrative that is highlighting the destructive nature of the Abu Khadijah cult. And those two ayats there talking about slandering and backbiting and would you like to eat the flesh of your brother. The Maktaba, Abu Khadijah cult, and those embroiled in this fitna are involved in a type of cannibalism that we should all abhor. And it's taking place within Salafiyah, and it doesn't seem like it's going to abate anytime soon. However, many have left. The ranks have been left and abandoned. Their numbers are dwindling. And this is very, very important and should continue. And inshallah, this expose, this account and discourse will be another contributory factor to the demise of the Abu Khadijites. Oasis, then SP, then they took the P, and we're realizing the mirage. Subhanaka Allahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.